Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for the premiere of House of the Dragon, folks. If you have not watched that, watch that first, then come back. There's some Game of Thrones spoilers there. Be careful. Dragons have arrived on HBO Max. The new HBO original series House of the Dragon is a prequel set 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon tells the story of House Targaryen locked in an epic battle for the Iron Throne and power over the Seven Kingdoms. The epic series promises more drama and betrayal than ever. Listen to the official Game of Thrones podcast, House of the Dragon, on HBO Max, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to celebrate, we're answering your questions from the Citadel. And here we go.
Cara, Alex, and Amanda ask, in the council meetings, they keep putting stones on round discs in camera shots that feel significant and pointed. Why does everybody have a stone ball? And what's their deal?
This is a non-book edition, and apparently this just came from production. One of the set decorators, the art design people, just decided this would be a fun way to represent that, each member of the council is present and ready to begin work, essentially. Ryan Condal is quoted in a Hollywood Reporter story saying, quote, everybody shows up for work and they punch in. I thought it was really cool. It's a way of visualizing the set formality of the small council chamber. It's enjoyable. We should have things that we like in this world. So just like a fun addition.
I love that.
I like it too.
I love it. I love some good production design that kind of adds to a world building.
Absolutely.
Okay. Meredith asks, from the conversation Otto Hightower has with his daughter Alicent, it's implied that he wants her to sleep with the king while he's grieving, much to Alicent's dismay. But all we see is her comforting Viserys. Are we supposed to infer that anything else happened between them, or just that she shared his grief? Obviously, I hope nothing happened for Alicent's sake, but I wonder if that means something will happen with him later on.
Otto is absolutely a planner, and he understands that he is sending his daughter, who he knows is a very open-hearted and sympathetic person and who recently lost her mother. He knows that he is sending her in there, and my read is he's not thinking that they're going to sleep together. And in fact, that would be horrendous for the fortunes of his house, like for his daughter to be like dishonored in that way. I think it would be bad. But he is looking certainly to improve the fortunes of his house, and he is thinking, oh, here is an emotionally vulnerable king. My daughter has experience with grief, and maybe they have something to talk about. And certainly if they do, and she's wearing a nice dress and she looks great, that will benefit my house. As Daemon says in the throne room about Otto, he's a second son and he's a cunt. What does that mean as second son? Well, the first sons inherit everything. The first sons become lords, right, when their lord father dies. The second sons, get a smaller tower and maybe get to go be a knight somewhere. They don't really get to inherit anything unless the older son dies. So this is Otto in that kind of grasping way, trying to make something happen. And again, I don't think he's thinking that the king and his daughter are going to sleep together. Certainly not now, but maybe in the future. He's certainly looking to build a bond there. And we should note that in the books, as old King Viserys was getting very, very, very old in his final days, in the books, Otto, in a very similar way, sends Alicent to go take care of the elderly and ailing king. And it was said that King Viserys thought that she was one of his daughters, because he was so addled at that time. So Otto is looking to do that. He is looking to build bonds and bridges between the Targaryen house and his own to lift up House Hightower.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It very much leads into the medieval kind of British monarchy influences on the show. It's very Henry VIII.
Very Henry VIII.
The royal family, the locals around them send my daughter, she's very good at, cleaning and being a companion. She can read books. It has a very big vibe. So I like your answer to that. I think it's true and generous, quite generous to old Otto.
I mean, listen, it's a sleazy thing to do.
Yeah,
I don't mean to say that he's not.
It's still sleazy, but it's not as sleazy as it could have been.
Right, exactly. But it is absolutely sleazy.
Ryu, Tom, James, and Nathan ask, how does the revelation of Aegon's vision, his naming of the Song of Ice and Fire, and the Targaryen secret change your view of the overall narrative that ties these stories together?
Oh my God, it's huge. It's a huge reveal. And the thing that I can't stop thinking about, and that I've been texting my Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire friends about, is how it would work. You know, so according to Viserys, Aegon had that dream. The dream has been passed as a secret from ruler to heir since the days of the Conqueror. And it's not as straightforward as it would appear. So, okay, Aegon and his sister Rhaenys had a son, Aenys, a.k.a. the Deuce, King Aenys. He followed his dad Aegon to the throne, became the second king of Westeros. And so far, very straightforward, right? Aegon's getting older. He names Aenys his heir, and he tells Aenys the secret. Okay. Now, Aenys was a weak king, rich kid. He didn't fully appreciate the fire and blood that Aegon expended to unite Westeros. He thought, oh, everybody loves us. Everybody loves the Targaryens. So he was very surprised when various challenges to his rule popped off as soon as Aegon had died. And now here's this new young king that everybody wanted to test. And Aenys's heir with his queen Alyssa Valerion was Prince Aegon, his son Aegon. He named him after his dad. Now, when Aenys suddenly passed away on Dragonstone, his brother Maegor, who was the son of Queen Visenya, he had been in exile in Essos. Visenya, as soon as she realized that King Aenys had passed away, she flew to Essos to get him, flew back, and Maegor seized power. So, okay, how would this have worked, right? Who told Maegor the secret, certainly if he wasn't supposed to be the heir? And then after that, how did Jaehaerys find out, considering that Maegor, died in a really sudden way as well? Okay, so let's unpack it a little bit. So Maegor's attempts at siring heirs were very unsuccessful. He went through various methods, including marrying 3 women at once to try and maximize his opportunities to create heirs. None of it truly worked. Then came Jaehaerys, who ascended the throne at age 14, ruled for 64 years, right? Okay, so how did these two find out about this secret? The most straightforward answer, I think, is that Aegon told his sisters. Aegon told Visenya and Rhaenys, when they were planning for the invasion. Maybe that's how he convinced them to do it, because it's kind of a big ask, right? To be like, hey, let's invade this entire continent with no army. So if Aegon had a reason, a secret to tell them, a secret mission that only the Targaryens could fulfill, maybe that is what motivated them to support their brother. It's another fascinating wrinkle to this is, in the books, it's said that Aegon's best friend, his closest friend, was Orys Baratheon, the founder of House Baratheon. They were supposedly bastard brothers. And you wonder if Aegon told Orys. But anyway, Rhaenys died in Dorne in 8 or 9 AC during the war to try and bring Dorne into the realm. Visenya, of course, survived, and then her son, born in 12 AC, was Maegor the Cruel. And we mentioned how when King Aenys died, she went and got Maegor the Cruel and brought him back, and he was crowned king. So if the sisters knew, okay, it's easy. Visenya just tells Maegor the secret, right? Now, Maegor ruled for, and this is very cute, 6 years and 66 days, a.k.a. 666, just to let you know.
That's fun.
What a guy Maegor was. He died very suddenly after a very, very violent and paranoid and bloody and despotic reign. He was found on the throne with the blades of the Iron Throne, literally stabbing him, piercing his body. And King Jaehaerys was crowned. Okay, so from what we know about Maegor, one, he didn't seem like the kind of person who's gonna, in a very sober and responsible way, tell his heir about this incredible mission that House Targaryen has. And also, he died violently without, we would assume, a chance to tell anyone, and certainly not Jaehaerys, the secret. And Visenya had passed some years earlier, so she couldn't have told Jaehaerys. Now, Jaehaerys was the prisoner when he was a child of Visenya for a little while, but why would she tell him then? Because there was no kind of indication that Jaehaerys would ascend to the throne at that time. So I was talking with my friend Aziz, who, along with his partner Shia, runs the History of Westeros pod, and the YouTube channel of the same name. They just know their stuff. They're the best. And Aziz brought up he had a good wrinkle to this. He said, what if it was Reyna Targaryen who passed the info to Jaehaerys? So Reyna Targaryen was the daughter of King Aenys, and the wife and sister of the rightful heir, Prince Aegon, the one that Maegor usurped from. So she would later, during the Maegor years, she fled to Fair Isle, was forced to wed Maegor at one point. But she's got all these connections to people who potentially would have known, right? She's King Aenys's daughter. Might he have told her? Prince Aegon, the heir, certainly would have known from King Aenys. So possibly when he was going off to fight Maegor, Maegor would kill him in battle. But perhaps understanding the danger he was in was like, hey, I got to tell you this secret that my dad told me. And maybe that's how it lived on. She was called later on, after the Maegor year, she was called the Queen in the West and then the Queen in the East, respectively, for when she stayed on Fair Isle and then later on Dragonstone. And this was because, taking, the fact that she was a woman aside, it seemed like the succession could have passed through her because she was King Aenys's daughter, and also she was the wife of the rightful heir, Prince Aegon. So it's possible. I think she's a great suspect for being the person who told Jaehaerys. Now there are other really, really interesting implications to this as well. So Aegon the Unlikely, Aegon V, was the 15th Targaryen king, and the brother of Maester Aemon, who we know from Game of Thrones, of the Night's Watch, and a one-time companion of the hedge knight known as Sir Duncan, the Tall, who, if you've read the Duncan Egg stories, you know about. So he came to power in kind of fluky circumstances. The previous king had died, Kingmaker had died in a rebellion, and there was no clear heir, so a council gathered. They offered it to his brother Aemon, who passed. He was like, I don't want to do it. You should give it to my brother Egg. And Aemon took the black and went to the wall, and Egg became king. Now, when Egg ascended, the realm was in the middle of a brutal winter, 6-year-long winter. And later in his reign, he became obsessed with the idea that dragons needed to come back. He wanted to hatch these dragon eggs that he had, and so that's how he died. He was at the Targaryen vacation palace of Summerhall, and he apparently was doing some sort of ritual to try and hatch these dragon eggs, and the castle caught fire, and he died. Now, what if you'd imagine if you knew this prophecy, right? And all of a sudden you're a Targaryen king, and it's the middle of this long winter, the longest winter that anyone can remember, and it's really bad. And you're thinking, oh shit, what if it's this one? What if it's this? What if this is the winter of prophecy? I bet if Aegon V knew about this prophecy, he would be really concerned that winter was the winter of prophecy. And maybe that's why he became so obsessed with trying to bring dragons back. All of a sudden, all these different
I love
actions
that
of
theory.
some of these Targaryen kings, like, they change and they shift a little bit. And in addition, the fact that the fluky circumstances of his ascension, right? Maester Aemon, Prince Aemon passed, and then goes to the wall, and he goes to the wall with Bloodraven, formerly a rebel and a hand to the king. All of a sudden, that looks like a weird plan or something, right? Like something like maybe acting on this understanding of the prophecy, they decided, you know what, we need to be close to winter. We need to be close to the lands of ice to kind of keep an eye on things. And you stay here, King, and you try and hatch the dragons, and we can attack it that way. That's the thing that I can't stop thinking about, is how this prophecy would have been passed down, how it would have worked. Did it get to King Aerys, whose son, of course, was Rhaegar Targaryen, who was overthrown by Robert Baratheon and then ended up being, killed by Jaime Lannister? Was he in the right mind ever to tell Rhaegar? There's a lot of suggestion that he had become very distrustful of his heir at a certain point. It'd be fascinating to know this. Another thing that my friend Aziz from History of Westeros brought up was Balon the Blessed. King Balon was a religious extremist, and it's very possible that if this prophecy is written down anywhere, that Balon would have hated it, would have not liked it, and he would have had it purged. So there's a possibility that it was lost at that time. But I tell you, the actions of Aegon V they hit different now that we know about this prophecy, and it's just fun to think about.
I totally agree. And as a prophecy lover, I will say, I don't think this will be the answer because it feels a little bit too easy, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe more than one person had the dream. If it hadn't got passed down, potentially they have the dream and they think they are the bearer only of that dream, and that could fill in some gaps. But I just love prophecies.
The other question is, like, is this written down anywhere?
Yeah.
It seems
like it would be in a world
anywhere?
of maesters and sparrows and spies and all this. It seems like there would be a version of it somewhere, but then the big question would be, why didn't it ever get to Game of Thrones? Jesus asks, there are at least 2 characters from Game of Thrones that are possibilities to show up in Hot D. Bran, the one-eyed raven, and Melisandre. I can see either one of those 2 showing up at some point to influence events to ensure a defeat of the Night King. What are the odds of these characters making an appearance, and who else from Thrones do you think could show up in the new show?
It's interesting. I doubt we see Bran as a time traveler or Melisandre, just because I feel like the showrunners would probably think the audience would be confused by that. That said, it is possible that Melisandre is running around at this time. We don't know how old Melisandre is. Carice Van Houten, who played Melisandre, has been quoted as saying something like she's way over 100. Does that mean she was alive during this time? We don't know. But again, I don't think we see her, but I love the idea of her being in the mix somehow during the time that this story is taking place.
Dano asks, did Otto and the Maesters conspire to kill baby Balon in order to clear the air so he could wed Alicent to Viserys? Whew.
Yeah, this is... No way. Maester Mellos and the whole realm in general would have been relieved if Balon survived to bring stability to the realm. They want that. Even Otto would be like, thank God. Now, it is not a uncommon thing for Targaryen children to die in infancy, or for, first of all, it's not an uncommon thing in this world for children to die in infancy, period. The Targaryens specifically had problems because they practiced incestuous marriage, which means that Targaryens are a mixed bag in terms of their temperament, see the Mad King, and their overall health. Maegor the Cruel notably sired multiple children who were born stillborn and having physical deformations. Okay, so the genetic makeup is not great. And of course, Targaryen pregnancies are often troubled. Queen Aemma, who's half Targaryen, half Arryn, had numerous miscarriages, like many, many, many. Princess Rhaenyra is the only one of King Viserys and Queen Aemma's children who survived to adulthood, but she was pregnant a lot before this, and none of those were successfully carried to term. So this is a not uncommon event.
Joan and Calvin ask, when you watch House of the Dragon, are there technological things that you notice that tell you we're 200 years prior to Game of Thrones? In Bran's flashbacks on Game of Thrones, it always struck me that the clothes, gear, transport looked the same, no matter where we were in time. But I might have been and continue to be missing a whole lot.
No, you're not. Technology evolves extremely slowly in this world, and I think the way to think about Westeros during this time and Game of Thrones and House of Dragon is that this is essentially the Dark Ages after the doom of Valyria. Valyria was like the most advanced, most powerful culture in the world at that time, right? They made think about Valyrian steel, which was this incredible substance created through the merging of spell casting and advanced metalwork. And after the doom, of course, that knowledge was completely lost to the point that though there are various houses, families, and in fact, like entire cities in Essos where, Valyrian lineage is strong, the knowledge of how to make more Valyrian steel did not survive. That was a tightly held secret that even the Targaryens don't know how to do it. So in a sense, we're in a dark ages where technology has really come down a significant notch from the high point of old Valyria. So that's a good way to, I think that's the way I think about it. Now, there are other moments in time, like in the far, far, far history, where you could feel technology change in a way that was that altered the history of the kind of like wider world. For instance, the original human inhabitants of Westeros were the so-called First Men, and they were displaced by the Andals, who came over from Essos and invaded and eventually pushed the First Men, almost all the way out of the lands of Westeros south of the north. And they were able to do that because they had better steel, better warfare technology. And the First Men, they were still fighting with bronze and stuff like that. So in the far, far past, you can feel that kind of like technology change, but it moves very, very slowly. And again, it was really the Valyrians who had the most advanced technology. Think they had the pyromancers, they had wildfire, they had Valyrian steel, all that stuff. But that's mostly gone now, except for, the wildfire and pyromancy. But most of that technology has been lost with the destruction of old Valyria. And that's it for this segment of Ask the Maester. Don't miss the new HBO original series, House of the Dragon, streaming now on HBO Max. And send us your questions at askthemaester@gmail.com.